I'm not sure I'm going to need the mic tonight because we're so few. But thank you for braving the rain and coming out. We have a somewhat of a groaning table there, so I appreciate everybody who eats a cookie that I don't have to. Okay? So we're going to do most of our business before the break, and that will allow us to have an extended Christmas social time. It's a very simple agenda today. I'm just going to do a few announcements, branch and OGS announcements. I'm not going to do any business, so Sheila, you can stand down tonight. Okay. And B is not here yet, so I don't think we'll have any correspondence either. So we're going to forget the actual business and just concentrate on having Christmas social. Is there anybody here for the first time? I think I recognize everybody. So, doesn't look like it. I'd like to remind everybody that we are still in great need of volunteers to help on several committees. We need a newsletter editor. There is a committee. I've had a volunteer come forward to work on the newsletter, but of course I don't want to scare her off by appointing her editor. So it will be a newsletter by committee, and I will announce the meetings on the blog and Facebook group, and anyone's welcome to come and join and bring something or be willing to type out an obituary and just help put the newsletter together for all our members from away. Like to reconstitute the education committee. I've had a couple of queries from a couple of libraries wanting some lectures done, and we don't presently have anybody but me doing them, so I'd like to have an education committee started up again. A vice chair or a member at large would certainly help. As they say, many hands make light work, and that would be much appreciated. And we've never had, or at least we haven't had for a long time, a greeting committee, and that would be nice to have people welcome new people at the door. So I don't know if you saw this in any of your emails or in the news leaf, the e-news leaf, but they've got a wonderful member bonus here from Find My Past. And that's the starter package. It's worth $35 US. Well, if you go and combine this with the Growing Our Family campaign and sponsor somebody, they'll pay you to be a member. Okay? So the Growing Our Family campaign, though, finishes December 31st, so it has to be done this month.
Could I ask about the starter package briefly, because I just set it up today, but when I made it on my task, just because I don't do that, I check the email, I didn't explain that much. Basically, as soon as I try to open up a screen, it referred me to all the different packages to buy. So I entered a code, I got the membership for 1 year, and I thought, okay, that seems like a very small amount, but okay. Then I searched for an ancestor. The names came up, and I thought, that could be him. And when I clicked the link, the link went right to the different packages that you could buy for 1 year.
Okay, so there's only certain databases, obviously, that's in the package. Now, I know the UK censuses are. I know the US censuses are. I have seen a list on one of the many blog posts I get, but I don't know exactly what is there.
So what I'm wondering is, basically, you get a screen where it tells you that it's like an index.
Yes,
And
results.
Results.
And then you have to go further
And you have to pay to see the additional information, right?
if it's not one of the databases that's in the starter package.
Okay.
Okay? Now there is, I believe, a 40% off a full membership to Find My Past, if you're interested. It is very expensive, so Yeah, this is a way to get used to the website. It hits a few of the major databases, the censuses, and there's, I believe, about 5 or 6 other databases that are included.
We're going to find information.
Speak up, please.
I think it was in one of the posts, yes. Okay. Well, there is a clickable link on the front page of the OGS website. See if they list it too. So when you do the Growing Our Family campaign, when you bring up your membership renewal form, there is a spot to put in the person of the name of the person that you are sponsoring, and then when this is the renewal form, when they fill out the brand new form, they also have a spot to put in your name. And it's down here at the bottom. And that's how they know to only charge you $31.50. Pardon?
And it works.
You got it to work? Awesome. We've had one successful match here. Okay. Normally I do this after the break, but this is what's in our upcoming meetings. January 3rd, we're doing our Breaking Down Brick Walls that we do every year because we can't always guarantee the snow will stay away. And we've had some speakers stranded, so we generally do this instead. But we've requested that you send in your brick wall problems ahead of time to durham@ogs.on.ca. That gives us, Steve, and Deb, a chance to look at it to see if they've got resources that might help. Anne has volunteered to show some strategies for backing up your files. Since it's a fact of life that it isn't if your hard drive will fail, it's when your hard drive will fail, it's a very good idea to back up all your data because you don't want to lose your 5,000 member family tree. And we've got a fairly full slate. We've even got we've got a speaker for June, but we haven't quite got her title yet. So all of our...
She got it down smaller.
She's got a small title for us, that's good. The last one was very long, but it was more a concept than it was a title. So we've got some good people coming. James Thompson is an excellent speaker, very, very thorough and very knowledgeable about maps. I saw this one done at the Uxbridge Genealogy Group about 4 or 5 months ago. I also took his Using Maps in Genealogy course when Toronto branch put it on. I believe it was a 2-week course, and it's very impressive. So that will be very good. Ted Barris is always very entertaining. He's going to give our military talk on our very close to the anniversary of Vimy. Paul Jones is going to give us a DNA talk. I am not a Jones, what am I? And he's got 2 cases of illegitimacy in his direct line. So it'll be very interesting to see what he found out and how he found it out. So I'm looking forward to that one. And the Lindhouse Museum staff are going to come and tell us what they've got for researchers at their museum in Whitby. Our DNA Special Interest Group is going to be on Wednesday in a couple of weeks. And I think it's going to be quite a loose and open meeting because December 21st, being very close to Christmas, we may have a low attendance. I still have to put my sister's DNA results into GEDmatch, so I think maybe we'll do a demonstration. So I'm looking forward to that. The OGS webinar, the next one is January the 7th, and it's past President Shirley Sturdivant going to be talking about evaluating genealogical sources, building a solid foundation. If you haven't seen any of the OGS webinars, I really recommend it. They've got some pretty good speakers, and a lot of them are archived, so you can watch them. Big news from Conference 2017, the registration is now open online, and they've sent out some information on, they call it a glimpse into this coming year's conference. We've got Joshua Taylor from the PBS series Genealogy Roadshow as our banquet speaker, and also giving some lectures. And he's very entertaining, so that will be good. They've got 4 excursions, probably on the Friday. They've got Friday workshops, and here are 2 of the topics: developing your technology toolkit and using family reconstruction to break down brick walls. They've got an incredible spread of lectures, and a lot of the speakers they had already set at conference this year, so they were very exciting array of speakers. They got some special events planned. British Pub Night. And this year at conference they did a Fast Tracks mini lectures out in the foyer outside of the vendor hall, and it was well received, so they're going to repeat that. As an extra bonus, Ancestry on the Monday after conference is going to do a full Ancestry Day. So we haven't heard a lot of details, but that could be very interesting too. And at this point, we're going to go right into our little vignettes, our bring and brag, or our show and tell. And I'm going to exercise my right and do the first one, because it's in my PowerPoint, so I'm going to do it. Okay. So we did a program survey, and I do thank everybody who filled that out. We had great responses.
Oh, yeah.
And my very last question was, do you watch our meetings online? And what I was looking for, believe it or not, was comments on how well our video worked, how well our sound was. I got some surprising results, and they were, I didn't know you could do that. How do I do that? Is it only live streamed, or can I watch it later? Variations on that was all but one of the comments that I received. One comment said the audio came through okay. So here's how you do it, folks. So if you get a bad night like today again, you can stay at home in the comfort of your home and watch us as long as we make it.
Except for Dan and Nan.
Dan and Nancy will be here.
We were thinking of staying home and watching it from there.
But you can't. You have to be here. I need my techie squad. Okay.
Get in on the cookies.
Pardon?
If they don't come tonight, they won't get in on the cookies.
Well, tonight they're not going to get in on the cookies, but we will raise a virtual hot chocolate toast to our online people. So, everything takes place on YouTube. I'm going to tell you about the archived versions first, because of course that's what you are going to be most interested in. And then I'm going to mention the live stream. So there's 2 ways to see our meetings. So the archived versions are on youtube.ca. The live streaming goes to a separate URL on YouTube. So you need to go to a specific website to actually see the live meetings. And Dan always posts it. When he puts up the agenda, the information about the meeting, he always posts that link.
But where would you look when you went to YouTube? Like what title?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, this is not going to work for me. The bottom arrow. points right to the blue link. And you can see it's not something I'm gonna read out to you and you're gonna easily write down, okay?
You can put your cursor on your computer.
You'll also notice he's put down a link to the archived November meeting. So Dan has your back on this. He gets you pointed in the right direction. So when you go to youtube.ca, you're going to type in the search box at the top. And what you're going to type in there is Durham Region Branch OGS. And you search. It's going to bring up a list of results. And the very top one, you can see with the picture of the tombstone. You're going to click on that link that says Durham Region Branch OGS. It's going to take you to our channel. So we have a dedicated channel. And down below the picture, there is a button that you can subscribe to that channel. And if things work correctly, you get notices in your email, especially if you've got a Google account. Okay, so you have to have a Google account, then you click subscribe. And you will get emails of anything new that gets posted. So you don't have to even remember. You'll get an email that you can click on the picture and it'll take you right to the meeting as it's archived.
Nancy?
Yes.
If you don't have a Google account, you can still do what you just did and then click on the right. You don't have to.
Yes, you don't have to expect an email. You can do it right from here. They've got a film strip there of some of our last meetings. Actually, I think it's just a random assortment of our meetings. And you just click on the picture and it will start running for you. As with anything on YouTube, when you search for something, you'll get a bunch of choices and you just click and it will start automatically for you. If you were to go, as I did 2 days ago, and click on the live streaming link, you will get a picture like this, where it says it's offline. But if you were to go there right now, you will see what's happening in the meeting. So now I'm going to hand this over. I am going to ask Joyce. I can hand you the list, no problem.
I'm going on the camera for Bob. No,
Are you the first one?
I think it was.
I think Bob was the first one.
Okay. Bob Bell is going to talk about postcards. I'm going to blank out the screen, and then Dan can focus on you. Just learned how to do that today.
Technology. Well, earlier this year, or late last year, I get a call from a friend who's a dealer in antiques. He says, I think I have something for you. And he knew I was giving some talks on the First World War. And he had a collection of postcards. And it wasn't all just First World War. We met at a local restaurant, one of those almost like drug deals. Here's the goods. And I looked at them and right off, you sort of knew you had to have them. And it was a neat collection. I put it in binders, divided it by subject rather than by chronological or whatever. This is a binder that has Oshawa postcards. And what I found really interesting looking at this collection dated from First World War till about the 70s, but primarily early. And the person traveled a lot more than you would think a person would travel at that early. All around Ontario, there's postcards from Saskatchewan, the States. Then you saw he went over to England, a created a whole binder just of English postcards. There's binder of North American, binder of ones from England, binder of ones from in the trenches, and some really neat shots there. You can see then there's some shots of convalescent homes, so you can sort of guess what happened. But then continued to present, so obviously he survived. But it got me thinking, I started to sort out some of my own postcards. And it's amazing how you collected them over the years. And little details I forgot. Oh, I forgot we took that trip. And I'm tying into genealogy here. It's a neat source, these old cards for figuring out where people were, where some of the other family was. You can see where they've sent, and little family tidbits in postcards. Some of the postcards were picture postcards, where it was photograph of individuals, and often they were identified, which rarely happens. So I just wanted to bring it up as a source that you might not think of, because things are stamped, which gives a date, postmarked. Here's where that person was at that date. And if you're wanting to set a history, I'm presuming this person was a Salvation Army person. There's an early picture of that Oshawa Salvation Army building, their band, and a photo of General Booth. There's Bowmanville ones, picture of the Oshawa Daily Telegram. Really quite interesting. So I just thought I'd throw it out there. I hadn't looked through I knew I had a collection of postcards of my own, but I never really thought of them as a genealogical source. And it was one of those things, oh, why didn't I do that before? And when I went through them, actually, I found a couple pictures that were slid into that I'd missed in the picture collections. So just a suggestion for people. And I'll leave these up at front for people to look through after. And if my sister tuned in, I paged her, I texted her, say hi.
Hi, Bob's sister. Okay, Deb Wilbur. And Deb's got 2 talks. Are you going to do both of them for us now?
I can take a breath in between, doesn't matter, whatever.
We'll start with the Fort York Garrison. Do
Okay.
you need the internet ready?
No, excuse me, I'm gonna go behind you. No, I'm not, I'm sorry.
Too many chords, be careful.
Yes, thanks.
And try to put them out of the way.
I started to do a presentation for both of these 2 Bring a Bragg stories that I was going to offer tonight. And then I figured, well, I'll just do it this way, so I hope you don't mind. My 4th great grandfather's name is John Wood. He was born in 1768 in Connecticut, so he's Connecticut John to me.
What's the
And
last name spelling?
Wood,
Wood.
W-O-O-D. Yeah. However, I've seen 3 O's, I've seen an E on the end, S, all sorts. So, John Wood was or is still to some degree an enigma to me. I didn't know where he was buried. He died at the Fort York Garrison in 1813 while he was serving in the War of 1812. So I finally found out where he is, with 99% surety, where he is buried. And there is a burial ground, a garrison burial ground right near Fort York. And so my husband and I went there, and
cross something off on my bucket list that I've wanted to go to for a long time. He was from Hope Township and served with other regulars in the York Regiment, as did some other men from Hope Township. And so I found his records in the RG series, I forget which RG series, that told me the date of his death, which is different from 2 books that I have found. And it's signed off by Captain John Byrne, who was his captain. So now, instead of April 7th, 1813, we know he died on April 6th. I took pictures of what it looks like today, and some of these buildings existed when he was there, and they're the ones that I wanted to see. The ones that existed in 1813 and hadn't been dismantled and rebuilt. So we had some help from one of the interpreters there, and he took us into one of the barracks, buildings, and he took us down to, there's a library downstairs that nobody knows about, nobody can go to, except for by special appointment. No, it wasn't an appointment, but it was he was really trying to help us, because he realized that he really couldn't say, well, he's buried right here. That's just not the case. He died in the hospital. He pointed across the railroad tracks where the hospital was, and then told us that the burial ground, and it was confirmed by, I've forgotten the man's name, it's with the city of Toronto. His name is Richard Gerard, and he's Collections and Conservation Center historian for the city of Toronto. So he between the two, they helped us find where John was probably buried. And the tombstones no longer exist, but we went to Victoria Square, which is between Wellington and Portland. It was just a couple of miles away. So we walked over there, and there's a monument to the various wars, starting with the War of 1812, and it is in the center of this burial ground. And there are old records, and some exist, or some of the burial records exist, but not all of them. Unfortunately, we don't know where he was buried. There were about almost 500 burials there. And the first burial took place in 1794, and her name was Catherine Simcoe. She was Governor Simcoe's daughter. And there are other notable people who are buried here, and I'm very honored to finally, and I guess relieved, finally to know where Connecticut John is buried. It means a lot to me. He served in the War of 1812. Yes, yeah. It was just for a few weeks, and he died of rickettsia. It's rickettsia. Yeah, I have to look it up. I can't remember anything now. It was because of the conditions there. They were unhygienic, and that's what most of them died from at that garrison. I was told that most of them died of disease. So, thank you.
If I remember correctly, rickettsia is a waterborne amoeba or bacteria or something like that, so it's polluted water.
Beaver fever.
Yeah, exactly, that type of thing. Dan, a book mainly about Peterborough, or do you want to
A
be?
bunch, and maybe if Ann goes before me.
Okay.
And then I can gather the books.
So Anne, you are going to be talking about 1999 babies?
I guess in 1999, we have a subscription to the Toronto Star, and this caught my eye, and I decided to save it, and I forgot I had done so. And then I was cleaning out a box, because I promised myself I would reduce the amount of stuff I have in my house, but I was cleaning out a box, and I came across this, 1999 Babies, the Toronto Star. And now showing, it says, but that was in 1999. And this is what it's like inside. Okay.
How many babies?
Well, there's a lot of babies. There's no explanation of why these babies are in the star. Maybe it was a baby contest or something. But there are a lot of babies. And not only that do they have their birth dates, but they also have the names of their parents. Okay, so you might not expect to find something like that in the newspaper, but anyway, so I thought that was unusual enough that I would bring it in and show you that sometimes you can find sources of genealogical data in other sorts of things.
I believe the Oshawa Times used to do that as well. I think my kids are in the Oshawa Times version. It's just a compilation of all the babies born during that year, if you paid a little extra with the birth.
Okay, so you had to slip them a little cash to put yours in.
That's
Yes, well, I guess there'd be a lot of babies born in Toronto in 1999. I also have something that was handed to us by Dawn, who is not here today, so I thought I would, since someone might wonder why it's on the table. He's brought this in. It's the Thomas Staples family in Canada, the United States of America, and elsewhere. And it's a family history that was made for a family reunion in 1966. And it was compiled by Thomas Staples, but I think that's a descendant of the same name. And it has a sort of family history and some pictures of documents, but it also has, all the pages are fallen out, but it has tiny, tiny, tiny family trees that you need a magnifying glass to look at. Dan has scanned this at Dawn's request. And when you scan things these days, you can get them optically character read, but because the text is so tiny, the optical character reading wasn't very accurate. For instance, the Staples family, I guess a lot of them are up in that Cavan area around Peterborough and Manvers, all around to the east and north. Anyway, well, one of the families that's very prominent there is the Follis family, and we know there's lots of Follises listed in here, but not one of them made it into the optically character read index. So, so we know it's not accurate, it is set up with generation numbers and things like that. So. At this point, you'd have to look through it, but I will leave it out. And 1966. So there's nothing in there newer than 1966, but there's some
There are
pretty
two
old
newsletters that go from 70 to 73, but they're maybe...
Oh, there, yes. So I think they had series of family reunions. So there's a newsletter from 1970, and now one from 1972 here. So, of their reunions of the Staples family. So I'll just leave that up over here.
Now, just to add to that a little bit, I did try searching, it's a PDF file now, and I I searched for my name, and I did come up with a relative. I did recognize my last name, and I found Sybil DeLong. Is that not coming through? Who used to be, no, she was Sybil DeLong, and then she married Hal McMahon, that's right. And they ran a store in Crawfords Grove, and before that, in Springdale, they had the first gas station and the post office and store in Springdale, which is near Peterborough, the southeast section. Now, I should add that there are a number of letters that were written to the man who made this booklet, handwritten letters telling family stories and family histories, and those are really interesting. The Manvers, Cavan area, Baltimore, just north of Coburg, because they did come to Canada via Port Coburg, and the very first mention of that family name, an explanation of where it came from, starts in 10 something, somewhere in the middle there, 1050 or something, in England. Then I guess the English went to Ireland. That family went to Ireland. They found it was very inhospitable because they were Protestant, and they went to Canada. It's quite a document. I was quite honored to read it as I was scanning it. Okay, and then I was visiting Peterborough today. I wanted to get a postcard book that just came out, go along with Bob's comments about postcards. And where did I put that? Yes, Elwood Jones, a well-known historian in Peterborough, along with Matthew Griffiths, has collected or shown a bunch of postcards up till about, I think, 1948, from the very earliest times. But it's not just the postcards. They also add as much history as they know about each of the postcards. So this is a book I just picked up today and really haven't had a chance to look through. And then, let's see. This book, which I hope is showing up, is an unpublished book about railway stations in Ontario by a railway expert, but a railway expert in Coburg. It's volume 2, but I'm afraid he had health problems before he was able to publish this. And so there is a copy in our library. It's quite interesting because it has pictures of a lot of the railroad stations, updates from volume 1 without pictures, and a little history of what's happened to these stations. So a railroad buff would like to know this. It wouldn't be very useful for genealogy, but for history it is.
Did they tell where you got it since it's unpublished?
Yes, well, maybe I better not on streaming and tell how I got it. No, I was in an old bookstore on Water Street in Peterborough today, Theo's. I found out, actually, Theo is not his name. His name is Bill Barclay, or William Barclay, and he went to the same high school about the same time I did. I don't remember him, but he runs this bookstore that's just jam-packed with books floor to ceiling, and he also fixes violins and accordions and stuff like that. Now, I started looking through his local history collection, and a book I didn't even know existed is this one, Standing Strong, Facing Forward. It's called A History of the Labor Movement in Peterborough and District. Now, I grew up in Peterborough, and that's why I grabbed this, and my father was the president, or brought in the electrical trade union in Peterborough, I think about 1961, he brought it in. The IBEW, they called it then. But this is covering a whole bunch of labor disputes just in the Peterborough area, or labor developments. And it has some excellent photos inside, and a bunch of names too, of people who were involved, like the Tilco strike, the plastic strike, the Bonneville strike. And there are a few smaller books, probably not of interest unless you are interested in the Kawartha area. This one called From Campsite to Cottage, about the Kawarthas and about how it changed. These three books were put out by the Historical Society in Peterborough. Another one is called The Cox Terrace, and George Cox. He was a very wealthy man. Didn't come into Peterborough as a wealthy person, but gradually did gain wealth through his insurance operations and buying and selling property. And he has some lovely adjoining buildings. I don't know, row housing in Peterborough that's just been restored. And this is about his life and his ownership. There are other buildings in Peterborough that he did as well. And I wasn't aware of this one, Peterborough Canoes by Gerald Stevenson. There was a large volume about canoe manufacturing in the Peterborough area, brought out by Ken Brown. He's an accountant in Peterborough and a historian. I'm not sure if he used this when I asked the book seller if he knew Ken Brown. He did, and if he ever had this book to use as one of his resources, probably did, because it is put out by the Historical Society on Brock Street in Peterborough. And so I got them at a good price, so I thought I have an extra one, by the way, if anybody is really concerned about researching Peterborough canoes. And who's on next? I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Who's on first?
Well, Sheila's going to talk to us. The title of this thing is called Kabar Feed, and I'll let her explain what that even means and what it's about.
Great. I've been looking through a lot of boxes that I got from my parents' apartment, and there's photos upon photos and everything, and I found this magazine, and it was in this condition. Like the first pages are all advertisements, but then it says Kabar Feed. So I Googled it to try and figure out how it said. That's what Google said, but I'm not sure if it's right. But it's the quarterly magazine of the Seaforth Highlanders. So I was going through it, and I found this picture, which I have seen before. And it's my great-grandfather from the 78th Highlanders. So, and it says, the late Sergeant Joseph Foster, 78th Highlanders, enlisted for the 78th of Foot, 20th April 1860 at Edinburgh Castle, a native of Peebles. But that's all it said. So I'm reading, and I come across another article here. So there's something about the annual report, and they were talking about another person, and then it said, an interesting departure has been made to help a badly disabled member resident in Edinburgh. And it talked about a free machine that they gave them to try to help them. But then it said, an interesting link with the past has been brought to notice in the person of Mrs. Foster, Montreal, Canada, whose husband was number 725 Band Sergeant Joseph Foster of the 78th Highlanders. And the case was brought to light by Mr. Joseph Henderson, an old Seaforth, whose father and mother were in the same 78th at the same time as Sergeant Foster. And he was a native of Peebles, and it goes on to say all the places that he went to, from Dublin to Gibraltar in '65, and went to Canada. In Canada, he was in Quebec, and then went to Montreal, and then went to Halifax, and then the regiment went back to Belfast. And so it gave me a whole lot of information. Then I was Googling and trying to find something, and I found a history of the Scottish Highlands, clans and regiments, which was published in 1875. And there was about 60 pages of the early history, told, every month by month where the regiment went. And then I came to the pages from 1859 to 1874, which was when Joseph Foster was there. And it said on the 8th of May, 1869, the regiment left Montreal for Halifax, and they were stationed there until 1871. They left in November 1871 back to Ireland. With them went 17 young Nova Scotian women who had married members of the regiment. And so, going back through my family history, I can see my great-grandmother was born in Wales, but had immigrated with her family when she was young to New Brunswick. But when she was 17, she went to Halifax. She worked in the governor's mansion and became the head housekeeper in 1870. She was the head housekeeper. But in 1871, she married Joseph Foster, and off to Ireland she went, and then they went to Scotland, had 6 children before they came back to Canada. And then my grandfather was the first child that was born in Canada. And at the end of this little note here, it says, they sent her a gift for Christmas, and she sent back a thank you note with 2 pictures. So there's another picture beside the one of my grandfather, this one here, the whole regiment, with the Colonel Mackenzie, Colonel Alexander Mackenzie, who's, I found a whole bunch about him too on the internet. So that was really interesting. So that was a nice find. And the other thing I have is, I've seen family histories before. This is a really nicely done family history. And it's a lady who is in the long-term care with my parents. So, like my parents' last name is Foster. And the lady, Ruth McLaren, she, her stepfather was Reynold Foster. So, of course, they got to talking, and my dad said, oh, find out if they're, which is not so easy. But this whole family history doesn't talk about the stepfather. So she's just a little anxious. She'd like to, she's 90 years old. She'd like to speak to someone that knew her stepfather, or was maybe a grandson or a great-grandson or something of the stepfather. So I'll just leave the book, and it's got a little bit about Reynold Foster, if anybody knows. They lived in Oshawa for ages, so maybe somebody might know him. Thank you.
And I'll call Debbie back up. So Deb's going to do her second topic, which is a World War I dedication ceremony. Oh, don't come that way.
Go over here.
Getting your exercise, Deb?
I am. I need it. I'm back. This time,
You need more space? Just shove the computer back. Harder.
it's okay, thanks. Now I'm going to talk about my husband's side. And I'm going to talk specifically about his second great uncle. And again, my presentation is half done on PowerPoint at home. So we're dealing with paper and a binder and some other tangible items. I've put together in my binder the early beginnings of a man named Edward Garfield Wilbur. And as I say, he's my husband's second great grand uncle. And he was born in 18... He was born in 1895, and he went off to serve in World War I, and he died. He was killed in action on September 15th, 1916. So the 100th anniversary of that date passed recently, and on that day, members of, well, he didn't have any descendants, he was unmarried and had no children, but the descendants of his siblings got together, and we planned a dedication ceremony. Because he is memorialized at Vimy Ridge, the Canadian government would not put up a military stone nor would they give any money towards it. So the family raised the $5,000 required for a military stone, and to mark his place where his parents were buried. They were buried at Erskine Cemetery and had died in very poor means they had at the time. So when they died in 1933 and 1936, there was no stone. And it took me a long time to find out where they were. And so we decided that it would be a nice thing to do, to have a dedication ceremony for Garfield, and to have the stone reflect his parents' names and birth and death dates, as well as Garfield Wilbur's birth and death dates. And there was a ceremony. It was a military ceremony. The flag. There was a flag over the tombstone for the unveiling, and they kindly gave this to my husband. It's the Canadian flag. They gave it to my husband because he's the son of one of the descendants, so he got it.
So where's the cemetery?
Well, we were at Erskine Cemetery in Pickering. Sorry, yeah, Pickering. And I brought along to show everyone because after the ceremony, there was a get-together at the Legion. And so I brought Edward Garfield Wilbur's Dead Man's Painting. That was in Doug's, my husband Doug's possession. And Doug's dad has just recently given that to Doug. So we brought that, and that was a really cool thing. The people that we were celebrating with, because we really did celebrate Garfield's life, short life. He was only 21, but they hadn't seen anything like that, so it was really nice to share that. So I took pictures, and I've got them here. Joe Dixon came. And this was also given to Doug. And it says, as a member of Provincial Parliament for Ajax Pickering, it is my pleasure to extend heartfelt wishes of peace, health, and happiness to the descendant families of Private Edward Garfield Wilbur. We honor the memory of war veteran Garfield, who gave his life on September 15th, 1916, with the ultimate sacrifice for the British Empire during the war. Best personal regards, Joe Dixon. Garfield served with the Princess Pat's Light Infantry because when he joined, the family was in Grand Coulee, Saskatchewan. So there was a military funeral. Like I say, the flag, there was the Canadian flag and the Ontario flag. There was a wreath. We all had poppies and flowers. Czech's TV came, and they aired a 10-minute vignette, I like that word, on Czech's News later that day, which was really nice. And years ago, I had paid for his World War I military file to be copied by National Archives Canada, and I paid for it. And now it's online for free. But at least I got it in 2005.
But they haven't gotten to the W's yet. It's not there yet.
Oh, it will be though. Yes, you're right. But some of them they haven't. Yes, yeah. That's right. Last time I checked, it was not. But as I understand it, they weren't going A to W.
Basically, they are.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to wait a while, but I don't really have to. So that's it. Thanks.
Yes, just a little note about that personnel files from the World War I, as they call it now, but it was the Canadian Expeditionary Force. They are digitizing all the personnel records, which were thinned, so that it wouldn't have been a complete record that was there at the end of World War I, but it's got most of the significant stuff still there. And last time I looked, they were up to the MAs, and they hope to have the project done by the end of 2018. So they're making progress, but my Wilkins is not there with your Wilbur yet. Or would. Mind you, I paid in 2000 for his personnel file. But I found some of my grandmother's Gould brothers in the CEF personnel papers. They are up there, and it's very interesting. And let me tell you, you need to go to the form that gives you all the abbreviations to understand it. You know, I soon learned TOS, taken on strength, SOS, struck off strength, and they usually match. They struck you off one unit and took you on another. Anyway.
Would that include the record? Would it include the medical convalescent records?
Yes. Yes. In fact, the one uncle was in hospital for 7 days with diarrhea. In fact, that was mentioned on about 4 different forms in his personnel file. So that was very interesting. So the last person we have is Steve, and he's going to talk about Worcester research, spelled Worcester.
That's right.
What's in that sauce, by the way?
I'm not telling you. It's secret herbs and spices.
That's right.
And the fish oil, I understand. I'm going to put this up for you, Steve. A little higher up.
As you know, it was pretty warm this summer, and our holidays seemed to hit right in the middle of the hot spell. And of course, I usually stay up at night anyways because I work night shifts, so I was slowly changing my sleep over to vacation mode, but not quick enough. And I decided to do some research. And I can see this color is not going to work out too well, is it? It's kind of blurry. Either that or it's my eyes, one or the other. Anyways, I did a bit of cluster genealogy. As Nancy says, the Worcester family, or Worcester, or however you want to say it. I like to say Worcester, just that reminds me how to spell it. But I have an ancestor, Elizabeth, or Betty Worcester, and I decided to try and find her family. She's been a problem for a lot of years now, and just recently Ancestry put up the Northamptonshire parish registers and BTs. So, thank you.
Is it focused?
It's as good as
That'll be a little better with the white background. This is the basics for her. She was married in 1747 in Pottersbury, Northamptonshire, and she was buried in 1797 in the same location, aged 74 years. So therefore, she was born about 1723. Pottersbury Parish Register has no earlier Worcester entries, so she obviously didn't come from there originally. This is just a map showing the parish. It's down in the bottom where the red arrow is. That area is surrounded by Buckinghamshire, so it is close to a separate county or shire in England, of which records I cannot get my hands on at the moment, at least not readily. So there is potential for further research on that. But what I did, I copied out all of the Worcesters in Northamptonshire prior to about 1750. I entered them all into my ancestry family tree. I made a special one. And I linked all the records that I could find to these families so that they were all backed up. And as that says, they had both the BTs and the Anglican parish registers. They were the ones available for me. There is only one, Elizabeth or Eliza or Betty or Betsy or whatever, one baptism available who was born about 1723, which was very fortunate. The only trouble is, she wasn't really close to the location I was interested in. This is the entry here. You can see there was one baptized 27th of January 1722 in Nether Hayford, daughter of Richard and Anne. That's just a copy of it, which obviously we can't see. Hers is the bottom one, and her sister, born the year before, is just above that. So I was able, as you can see, nice fancy records there. That, I think, is the original parish register. Although it kind of looks like it's been recopied because the handwriting's awful neat. So the higher arrow is Nether Hayford, and the lower one is Pottersbury. You can see there's a distance between them. Actually not quite as far as it looks like on the map. It's about 13 miles. So the known children of John and Elizabeth Bliss, who she married, were possibly Sarah, possibly Elizabeth, Thomas, Mary, John, William, Mary, and possibly a Susanna. Unfortunately, we don't have the whole list of children in the baptisms, because there are some that appear in the parish later on for whom there are no baptisms. But because they're the only family of Blisses in the Pottersbury parish, they likely belong to that family. The given names of potential parents, I should see if this works. No, that's good. Richard and Anne are not present in the names that I have been able to come up with, so I can't use naming patterns in this. As it turns out, the names of the potential parents of John Bliss, which I uncovered in a second search after this one, were Thomas and Elizabeth Bliss, which match up to two of the possible children of John and Elizabeth Bliss. So the Thomas and Elizabeth are mentioned up there, but not Richard and Anne, which is unfortunate. So that was one strike against me. As I mentioned, I entered all these families in, and then I would link the sources to them. And you can't read that note there, but that's just a cautioning note. And I created a special, I called it Early, Worcester, and Worcester families of Northamptonshire. So that was the project. I drew them all up in chart form because I find that easier to work with. They usually had marriage and burial dates for the parents, and they usually had baptismal and burial dates, and sometimes burial dates for the children. Because it's not a real common name, I was able to match a lot of them together in logical sequence. Nether Hayford had only the one Worcester family. They had children Anne, Elizabeth, Mary, Richard, Susanna, and Sarah. And Richard and Anne Roberts, both of Hayford, were married in 1721 in Rockhall Parish, bringing in a new location. So going through the registers, I was able to determine that an Anne Worcester of Hayford married John Manley of, I assume this is Toaster. I always call it Towchester because it's easy, reminds me how to spell it. But Toaster in 1750, yeah. I know, I don't like that. Married John Maynard, and they were both a Toaster. Richard, I could not find any further information on him. Susanna was buried in Nether Hayford in 1732, so she was out of the picture. But her name is kind of important because it keeps appearing. Sarah married John Dunkley. They were both of Toaster. And Richard, probably the senior, but it could be the junior, was buried in 1750 in Nether Hayford. And then in Ann Worcester, widow, was buried in 1761 in this Towcester parish. So it looks like a lot of the family from Nether Hayford ended up in the Toaster parish area. And if you can see this, Toaster is very close to Pottersbury. It breaks the distance from Nether Hayford in half. So the whole family moved southward through the Northamptonshire into that region where I was looking for. So it brought everyone in that family much closer, making everything more plausible. Pottersbury and Toaster are about 6 miles apart. 3 of the sisters and their mother all had connections to Toaster Parish. So I think the likelihood of Elizabeth being the daughter of Richard and Anne of Nether Hayton is very high. I think I found her. The only catch is I still have to check Buckinghamshire parish registers when they become available, just in case. I do have possible parents for Elizabeth's father, Richard Worcester. I believe he's the son of Richard and Susanna. There's the Susanna name that keeps popping up in the family line, so that was nice. And his wife, Anne Roberts, was baptized in Bugbrook Parish, Northamptonshire, which is right next to Nether Hayford. So everything ties nicely on that one. They married a little later than usual, but all the children's dates fall within plausible range there. Can't see it very well, but the tree from Elizabeth in the first box now extends to all her grandparents, and then the one line on the bottom, which is the Alabones, I can actually go about 2 more generations off the page there. So I really came up with a lot of ancestors using this approach. It's not etched in stone, but I think I have the family.
Thank you.
So that's all, folks. The good part's yet to come, the Christmas social with our potluck goodies. The hot chocolate is made. Thank you for speaking long enough, Steve, that I could get the hot chocolate made. And just a reminder, the next meeting will be January the 3rd, breaking down your brick walls here. And there's our contact information. And now it's time for our Christmas social. And cheers to those at home. We'll do that. We'll do the draw during the social, because it doesn't affect anybody at home. And we'll let them wish us Merry Christmas as well, and sign off instead of having to sit for 20 minutes while we have our coffee break. So, that's it. Let's eat.